Hi, I'm Rena Pelche, and thanks for tuning into Community Producers on Shaw TV Red Deer. This show is all about you, members of the community, where you're able to show your videos. What you see here are videos produced or hosted by volunteers just like me. To kick things off, we head over to Collegiate Sports Medicine to learn about hip and lower back pain and what to do about it.
My name is Melanie from Collegiate Sports Medicine, and joining me today is Terrence Robertson. We're both certified athletic therapists, and we wanted to go through hip and low back pain with you today as a way to try to help people understand something that a lot of us deal with on a day-to-day basis. The number one thing we see in the clinic is actually hip and low back pain, and we recognize that there are a lot of things that you can do at home to help get yourself better, or at least recognize that there's a problem that you need to search out treatment for. So a lot of you might find that your hip or low back hurts when you sit for long periods, or when you go to get up from a chair, you know, that region will hurt as you move to standing. Or you might find that your back's sore when you get up out of bed in the morning, or go to bend down to tie up your shoes. And I think with those things, we really you know, have to recognize that that isn't normal. You should be able to move through those things on a day-to-day basis without problem. And so Terrence will go ahead and explain a little bit more about how pain can limit our movements and willingness to move.
Thanks, Mel. One of the biggest barriers to getting better from injury or having issues such as arthritis or hip replacement or a strain or sprain is the unwillingness to move because you're in pain. When you're in pain, so when you're scared to move, then we know that science has shown us that exercise can be a therapy, and by pushing through a little bit of discomfort will actually help you to improve your condition and be better.
For sure. I mean, definitely there's probably not a condition at all that we can think of that that exercise wouldn't be indicated for. Like anything like a scoliosis or even like a heart transplant, hip replacement, it doesn't really matter. There isn't anything on the map that we wouldn't have some form of exercise rehab that would be beneficial for the client. Most times it's actually beneficial to get moving right away. And things like the big ticket items, the big surgical joint replacements, people think, wow, I had the whole joint replaced. I shouldn't move ever, maybe. And really it's the opposite that's true. So.
Yeah, and goes into even mental health, Melanie. Like, you don't move, you don't feel good, and then you feel unattractive, you gain weight, and then now you're putting more stress and load on the joints, and now you're causing long-standing pain as opposed to just the injury that you're dealing with currently.
In terms of limited joint motions, one of the things that happens as soon as we do have an injury is we start to limp, or we start to change how we move. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that we see, is that people will have an ankle sprain or something and they'll start to limp. And no, I'm good. I can walk normally. I'm fine. I don't need crutches. And so instead of walking with short steps in a normal movement pattern, we actually turn our foot or hip and start walking with a bit of a limp. And the longer we do that, the more ingrained it becomes. And so then that negative movement pattern actually wears away at our joints, because it isn't an optimal type of load on our body. And so the better biomechanically we move, the less negative joint stress there is, basically. And so we basically want to try to help people identify when they are moving poorly. They don't even know, it just becomes second nature, and they limp. And friends might say, yeah, you limp. You're like, really? I didn't know I was limping. And so I think to be able to identify movement patterns that are a problem is very important for you, but also to look at how to I guess work within the painful phase of an injury with very specific movements. So maybe you hurt your shoulder, but that doesn't mean you can't still work on cardiovascular fitness, or you hurt your low back or hip, like we're going to talk about today. And again, very specific exercises based on your injury and the assessment of that injury that are actually beneficial. Some things aren't beneficial and can actually worsen it, so to be able to identify that as well. All right, so Terrence, what I'd like you to maybe go over right now is just, 4 main types of injuries that we see with low backs, things that, and just describe the anatomy or what it is that we see in a little bit more detail.
So one of the most common injuries that can happen in a back or a hip is just the muscle strain, where the muscle fibers are being pulled on opposite ends in a load situation, where say you're lifting the laundry basket, or you're lifting some groceries out of the trunk and carry up the stairs, and you feel a little twinge in your back. It's just the muscle fibers can't handle that load, or you twist funny and the muscle itself gets strained, is one of the most basic injuries. Another one is if you, where the vertebrae sit on each other, there's a joint called a facet joint, and that's where a lot of the load goes through outside of your discs. And if you load your spine and twist in a funny way, you may pinch that facet joint and cause a strain to the ligaments. This is where the two vertebrae sit on each other, and you can get a sprain of the ligament that holds this joint together, provides some stability to the joint. So when your vertebrae are moving, there's a lot of gliding and sliding that happens at that joint. So if you tear the ligament that supports that joint, you can get a lot of pain every time that joint moves. The other injury you can have is what we call a herniated disc, and that's where you get compression of the vertebrae, which causes the disc to rupture. And why that's important is that ruptured disc can then put pressure on a nerve that comes out from between the vertebrae, and then you can get the radiating pain down the back of your leg or into your glute area or your hip. The other injury is something that's a little more long-term and is a congenital issue, where something you've been born with, like a scoliosis, where you have a permanent curvature of your spine. So it's not straight up and down, you actually have a curve in your spine.
Thanks, Terrence, for that info on the back. The other area that we want to look at is the ball and socket joint of the hip. So with the hip itself, we have basically the actual ball and socket joint proper, and inside the joint itself, it's lined with articular cartilage. And so if a joint is moving freely with full range of motion, there isn't a lot of internal pressure on that cartilage itself. It's freely moving, and it has the right basically amount of pressure on, I guess, within. And if a person overloads their joint in the hip, maybe they sprain it through maybe a fall, or maybe they're snowmobiling or something and they jar it, then you can kind of jam that joint and actually get some inflammation that causes the joint to become inflamed and tighten up. And then as the inflammation sets in there, the capsule tightens and it increases the pressure on the ball and socket joint, and actually wearing out the cartilage cap on the end of the femur. And so that can really erode that and cause premature or early arthritis to form. Arthritis is basically joint inflammation, but the longer an inflammation is in there, the more the cartilage end plate or end cap will wear off and thin down and basically become more bone on bone. And so we can recognize that type of thing as well with a few tests that we'd like to show you today in terms of how to identify a tightness in the hip. And there's another third area, which is basically the SI joint, and that has to do with an area like Terrence was talking about. We can sprain those ligaments as well as the lumbar spine, and we'll kind of look at that area as well, more in the clinic. But that's kind of where the spine meets the hip at the back. All right, regarding the hip joint itself, we want to give you some self-checks for home so you can help to determine if there's a problem that you can identify right away. So with the hip itself, because it's that ball and socket joint, we want to test to see how it's moving. So with Terrence, if we get him to bring his knees together, so at home, just if you're seated on a chair, just do this and try to walk your feet apart. And ideally, you should be able to get them, a couple feet apart. So this is, he's more than 24 inches, and that's excellent internal hip rotation. So if you see that you do it and your knees are together and you can only come about a foot apart, that's a tight hip capsule, and that could lead to hip arthritis. Or if they're different from side to side, one goes more than the other one, or if there's pain when you do this. There shouldn't be any pain, just maybe a bit of tightness. The other one is if you, Terrence, try to cross your legs like you're putting your socks on. So you can see how his ankle is here and his knee is slightly higher than his ankle. So this is okay. Terrence is a little bit tight in external hip rotation. Ideally, what we want is to see that the knee is no more than 8 inches above the foot. So he's somewhere around 8 inches. So I would probably recommend for Terrence to work on hip external rotation. And of course, if you try it on the other leg, so just in the morning, so when you're putting your socks on, just to see, are they even, and is the knee just slightly above the height of the ankle. All right, the next exercise or test is a butterfly stretch. So bring your feet together, just lying flat on the floor or flat on a bed, and just drop your knees to the side. You should see again that your knees are able to come about 2 feet apart. So from kneecap to kneecap on Terrence, he's 30 inches. So this is not excellent by any means, but it would be a minimum that we would want to see somebody have. And so 24 inches gives you a reasonable amount of hip rotation. So, and also you want to see that they're even from side to side. The next one we're going to do is a knee to chest exercise or stretch. Basically, Terrence, pull your knee to your chest. Now, with this first one, we want to see, is it pinching in the front of his hip? If it is, that could be the sign of an inflammation in and around that joint capsule, starting on maybe from gardening or being a mechanic and slouching down in a bent position. So if he's getting pinching at the front, there's a sign that you should get that looked at. And Terrence, do the other one as well quickly. Good. And you should see that they are the same and that they feel pain-free, no pinching at all. The next one is really the same motion. So again, Terrence, actually bring this knee to your chest all the way and relax this leg. So if this knee lifts up off the bed like it's doing, that means his hip flexors are a little bit tight. If your hip flexors are tight, that can be a sign of concern, I guess, for low back pain, because your hip flexors will pull on your low back. So if they're tight, either one tighter than the other, or they're tight in general, then that can basically lead to ongoing back problems. So Terrence, try the other leg. Drop that leg down, and so you can see this leg's lifting up a little bit too. But at home you might find that one is a lot higher than the other, and again that's a sign for an asymmetry or to cause an adaptive movement pattern.
So the self-checks we're showing you here today is something that you can do at home just to see if what direction you need to go, whether you can look at it, take care of it yourself at home, or need to seek a professional for a more thorough evaluation. So to check for low back to determine possibly a muscle strain, a facet joint sprain, or a bulging disc, you can do some active range of motion on your own. So Melanie here is going to demonstrate. So the first one I'd like you to do, Mel, is you're just going to extend your back as far back as you can comfortably, feeling for just a normal tightness or a compression. You shouldn't feel any pinching in the low back, any sharp pain, or any radiating pain down into your glute or down your hamstring. Any localized pain would be indication maybe a facet joint. The other, if it radiates down, that could be indication of a bulging disc. As well, you're going to bend forward at the waist and try and touch your toes, looking for the same things, looking for tightness or sharp pain or radiating pain down into the glute or hamstring. And stand up, Melanie, and face this way. And then you'd also want to do some side bending, so just hands on your hips and side bend, just feeling for some normal tissue tension the other way. And then keeping your hands on your hips, I want you to turn as far as you can.
So if I was tipping to the side and I felt something, I would feel...
you would feel that same thing. You're looking for localized pain in the spot where the facet joint would be, or radiating pain down the leg. And so hands on your hips, and then you're going to rotate as far as you can one way. And my suggestion would be to do this in front of a mirror so that you can look to see if you're equal both sides when you're side bending and rotating. So the last maneuver you want to do after doing those other 6 movements is you'd want to lean back slightly, side bend to one direction and turn to the same direction. Now if you get any sharp pain or radiating pain with this movement, you should seek professional help such as your therapist or a physician. That's our segment on hip and low back injuries. I hope the information was able to help you determine whether you need to seek professional help. Thanks for joining us.
On to our next 2 stories, which come from the city of Lacombe and were shot and edited by community producer Devin Kumar.
Hi Lacombe, Jordan Thompson here with the city. I'd like to take a moment to tell you about an important infrastructure improvement project starting this spring. The Main Improvements Project is an important project for Lacombe's downtown. The primary purpose of it is to replace a sanitary sewer main between 53rd Street and Highway 2A, as well as on 49C Avenue. The sanitary main is virtually collapsed in several areas and requires significant maintenance in order to ensure the sanitary wastewater flows on a regular basis. We've taken steps to ensure that by doing the work this year, that work of this nature is not required for the foreseeable future. We've ensured that the underground systems are sized for future growth and that they are poised to support Lacombe for years to come. The Main Street Improvements project will take place in 5 stages, working its way from the east side of 50th Avenue through to the west side of 50th Avenue, ending at 53rd Street. Sidewalks and businesses will be open during construction. For more information about this important project, please go to www.lacombe.ca/Main Street, where you will find maps to help you get around during construction and an interactive map to assist you in planning your route downtown and your shopping experience in Lacombe's historic downtown.
It's a great day in Lacombe today where we're hosting the Federal Minister of Infrastructure, Minister Amarjeet Sohi, and the Provincial Minister of Transportation to make an announcement with regards to the kickoff of our North Red Deer Regional Wastewater Services line, which will take our wastewater from Lacombe through Black Falls and end up being treated in Red Deer and put back into the Red Deer River where we get our drinking water. So it's a huge, huge announcement. I know it's not the sexiest project in the world, but it's something that is greatly important and needed here in Lacombe and Central Alberta. So thank you to everybody that was involved to making this happen. Have a great day.
I don't have to tell you, people sitting in this room, how critical infrastructure is to economic success, but also building sustainable, inclusive, safe communities, as well as providing opportunities for Canadians to be part of the economy. So I am very, very happy to announce that this announcement has been made that this project is receiving $29 million from the federal government to make this project a reality. And this project will be This project will connect to Lacombe, Black Falls, and Lacombe County to the regional wastewater treatment facility in Red Deer. And this critical infrastructure will help safeguard the well-being of residents, protect province's waterways, and preserve local ecosystems. In doing so, it will also ensure the long-term health and prosperity of the Lacombe, Black Falls, and Lacombe County residents and their families for generations to come.
So we're happy to partner with the federal government and with the municipalities and the commission in order to get this important project built. This is a great day, and Steve and the commission, I know one of the first people I met with was Steve and colleagues, some of his colleagues from the commission. I don't think he thought he'd ever get this project going, but we made it happen, and I think it's going to improve the life, make sure that the health of all of the citizens of this area is well protected now and going into the future. So thanks very much. Congratulations. I'm really looking forward to. I've never seen a sojourn indoors before, so that's going to be a new experience for me. So thank you very much.
Welcome back. The Canada Winter Games is less than 2 years away, and this video from the Games Committee should get you excited if you aren't already.
Winter 2019. Temperatures will plummet, snow will fall. but it'll be a little warmer in Red Deer, Alberta, from the heat of our hearts as we prepare to stage the largest sporting event in our history.
Is the city of Red Deer.
The 27th Canada Games will be hosted in Red Deer, February 15th till March 3rd, 2019. Across the nation, tens of thousands of young athletes are training for their chance to compete in the 2019 Canada Winter Games, this country's largest multi-sport competition for young athletes. Expectations are high. In 2019, 3,600 athletes, managers, and coaches will travel from 800 communities across Canada to compete for gold in 19 sports. To help them achieve their best, over 5,000 volunteers and 500 officials will dedicate hundreds of thousands of hours. In the stands, over 100,000 spectators, visitors, and family will cheer them on. And over 5 million Canadians will tune in to catch the action. This is our moment. Not only true for the athletes competing, but also for Central Alberta. Together, this is our moment to show what we've got. A vibrant community opening its arms wide to welcome the nation. It's our time, we are ready. And this is our story. It represents the 2019 Canada Winter Games. It begins with the elements that made Red Deer our home. Our community was founded on the banks of the Red Deer River that runs through our city. Rich agriculture inspires and surrounds us with golden fields, representing our roots and the promise of growth. Our community and spirit is bold and creative. Together, these elements will help tell the stories of the 2019 Games. I'm Ron McLean, and obviously my story started in Red Deer, Alberta. Now, for thousands of athletes, volunteers, coaches, parents, and officials, their story will begin here too. 2019 Canada Winter Games. This is our moment.
Well, that does it for this edition of Community Producers. Now, if you want to be a part of the show as a reporter, editor, videographer, or a host, send us some video you've produced. Then get in touch with us using the contact information on your screen. I've been your host, Rena Pelche. This is Maddie McCullough. Thank you for watching.